Hi and welcome to Qt QML tutorial. Today we will finally start talking about GUI programming in Qt. My name is Lukas Kosinski. I am the CEO at Safe Studio, Qt QML consulting company. We help our customers achieve their objectives by providing them with skilled Qt developers. You have to know that there are two ways of coding GUI in Qt framework. One using Qt Widgets module and C++ code only, maybe with a pinch of CSS, and the other one using Qt Quick module and QML language. Both those ways are awesome. I'm going to explain you the differences between them and when to use which one for the particular case. And well, the name of the tutorial is Qt QML tutorial, right? So you may guess that in the next episodes we will continue with QML and ergo with Qt Quick. But let's give you a background on both those technologies. Enjoy! Firstly, you have to know that both Qt Quick and Qt Widgets are modules of the Qt framework and both are important long-term parts of this technology. Those modules are two different ways of developing GUI using Qt framework. Both are great, but for your next projects, you would need to choose your camp. You would need to choose between Qt Widgets and Qt Quick. Sometimes you can mix both those technologies and inject parts of Qt Quick of QML code into Qt Widgets applications. However, it's not so popular case. Let's say that it's a third way. Let's then start with introduction to Qt Widgets. Qt Widgets are as old and also as mature as the entire Qt framework, as Qt was originally created as a GUI framework, and that's also the common understanding nowadays. There was a need to have something like widgets to code those GUIs on desktops at that time. Firstly on Linux, and then support for other desktop platforms like Windows and Mac OS was added. When you code using widgets, Qt widgets, you have to use either C++ or Python. This can be beneficial for you if you are already experienced in one of those programming languages. Inside Qt widgets, you will find plenty of controls called widgets, and you can use them to build your user interface. Those widgets are C++ classes like QPushButton, QComboBox, RadioButton, QProgressBar, QSlider, and many other. Typical Qt widgets application consists of C++ classes extended with form.ui files. What is that? Let's take a look at simple custom Qt Widgets class. When you create a project in Qt Creator using Projects Wizard, you have a main window class, and that extends QMain window widget. It's of course a Qt class for the top window of your Windows application. But there is also this private UI member. There is no class like that in our projects tree, so where does it come from? This class is generated by user interface compiler, in short UIC, and it takes this UI file and generates code. So it's a bit like meta object compiler, but for different purpose. If you take a look at .ui file with plain text editor, you would notice that it's just XML file. The recommended way of editing it is using a designer that allows you to drag and drop widgets and layout them just as you like. You can also customize the widgets using QStyleSheet, and that works almost the same as CSS for styling widgets. There are some other ways of customizing look of Qt Widgets apps, and one is by using QStyle class approach, and the other one is drawing your own widgets. But it's not that easy, especially for beginners. Generally speaking, extending widgets may be a bit cumbersome. So yeah, after I edit form file, I can come back to C++ and access everything from UI private member. For example, I can connect to on-click signal of this push button if I would react to such an event, or I could set text. And after I start the app, you can see that changes that I have made to form file were applied. I mentioned that customizing widgets may be a bit cumbersome, but it's not impossible. You can take a look at Styles demo to prove that. Yeah, and well, the good thing about widgets is that they can adjust to the native look of the operating system that you are using. So for example, if you're on Mac, your app will look like typically macOS application. It will look native and it will look differently than on Windows. Using Qt widgets, you can render your own custom drawn widgets using OpenGL or other native backend rendering technology. However, widgets use more like direct rendering approach, and this is good because in one Qt widgets desktop project, I had a situation where there the software was used by blind people and they were using screen reading software for Windows. And because the widgets use direct rendering methods and Windows API, that software could recognize my application as Windows, buttons, and all stuff without a need to change anything in the software. Yeah, in general, Qt widgets are nature and many small things like that are simply useful and you do not need to code them on your own. They just come out of the box. For example, Qt widgets app support keyboard navigation very well. Yeah, so let's summarize widgets. On the pros side, we have things we just talked about. Among cons, I would put cumbersome customization, difficult styling and animation. Yeah, it's possible. You can have like beautiful and animated UI, but it's just really difficult to code sometimes. And there's also that feeling that widgets are old. And there's also the fact that widgets may be a bit problematic for people with no C++ or Python background. For example, for mobile or web developers. Now it's time to talk about Qt Quick. We will use Qt Quick for the rest of the course, so let's just introduce it shortly. Just like widgets, it's a way of coding GUI in Qt framework, and it's a module that is part of Qt since more or less 2012, I think so. At that time, Qt 5 was released along with Qt Quick 2.0 version. So yeah, Qt Quick is a way newer than Qt widgets, but still quite a lot of time passed, and Qt Quick is mature and stable technology now. But yeah, of course, there are some issues sometimes. And you have to know that the name of the module is often interchangeably used with QML name. Nobody cares, and I also sometimes say QML, meaning Qt Quick, but yeah, there is no shame as both are used together all the time. Just to explain the difference, QML is programming language. It provides the engine and language infrastructure. Qt Quick is an actual module framework with all the basic types that are needed to code UI. QML and therefore Qt Quick code looks like that. There is an easy to read and JSON-like syntax to declare how the item should look like. QML uses JavaScript for scripting, and because of that and some other and many other reasons, QML fundamentals are quite easy to learn. All the features of Qt, like signals and slots or properties, things we talked about in the previous episodes, are also available in QML. In fact, you could even code the logic side of your app mainly in QML, but I recommend to split the front-end code and back-end code between QML for UI and C++ or Python for applications logic. Qt Quick has excellent support for embedded devices and mobile platforms like Android or iOS. Also, Qt for MCU microcontrollers comes only with lightweight version of Qt Quick. So if you target embedded or mobile such platforms, you would rather choose Qt Quick. Yeah, and Qt Quick controls module of Qt Quick provides items that may look like native, not only on that was a fly, sorry, not only on desktop systems, but also on iOS or Android with Material Theme. Yeah, and Qt Quick apps UI may look like this, and achieving the same effect with widgets would be just difficult. QML is a way more efficient if you have a rich UI with tons of advanced graphical effects or animations. In general, I would say that creating UI for devices with touch screens is more convenient using QML. Unlike Qt widgets, Qt Quick uses native rendering like OpenGL, Metal, Vulkan to render UI, which has some benefits and limitations at the same time. So, summarizing, Qt Quick is great if you have a modern project with custom UI and many animations. It's also great for embedded and mobile platforms and touchscreen devices, and it's also easy to learn. Also, in many cases, it's fast. As the cons, I would mention fact that because Qt Quick is newer, you may face some unexpected issues. I'm not even sure what to put here. It's so unexpected. And the other thing is that you need to do some things deliberately and consciously. For example, proper layouting or keyboard navigation. It's all on you to implement. Yeah, I am more like in Qt Quick Camp, and as the founder of Qt, QML, C++ consulting company, I can say that more and more projects are switching to this approach. I would say that, I would say that huge majority of new Qt projects are based on Qt Quick. However, I still strongly value Qt widgets. They are mature and they are great. So let me present you with some ideas when to choose a particular approach. Of course, it will be a simplification. Often it will require deeper research, more detailed look at the factors. Yeah, but anyway. So I would go with widgets if GUI of your app would be simple and your target platforms would be desktops only. If you develop tool-like desktop software, I mean engineering tools, CAD-like software, administration software, graphics software, etc. And I would also go with Qt widgets if you have great C++ or Python skills that you want to use for GUI part. And think about Qt Quick. Go with it if you want to use Qt for MCU microcontrollers, if you target embedded or mobile platforms, if your project targets touchscreen devices, if you want to have rich, beautiful, modern, and animated GUI, and if you want your project to be fully cross-platform. I mean, for example, support both desktop and mobiles. Yeah, and that would be all for this episode. I hope that now you have a slight small idea which technology to choose for a particular case. I recommend you subscribing to our channel. I would kindly ask you to give me some feedback in the comments. We also make some other content. It's about C++, about Qt, about embedded, about cross-platform. It's called Qt Talk. It's a podcast, kind of podcast. It's on YouTube and on Spotify. And yeah, you can also check our LinkedIn profile because we are publishing there a lot about Qt. All the links are in the description. In the next episode, we start talking about QML. There will be basics of QML. You can start watching it right now. See you.